Hey, peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. And so is this wonderful, dynamic, incredible, awesome young lady who's sitting to the left of your screen. She is a hero of mine. She is the professor of voice, associate professor of voice at Berklee School of Music, Berklee College. She is also the author of the wonderful book, Being a Singer. But most importantly, and she will probably agree to this, is one of the greatest accolades of her illustrious career is helping me moderate the EntreMusician Mastermind Collaborative. I'm sure that you couldn't give her an Emmy that would top that feat. I'm so grateful to be able to have an opportunity to conversate with my friend and hero, Linda Balliro. How are you, dear heart?
Well, that is an amazing thing to say when you provide such great leadership for that group. And it's really an honor to be there with everyone who's working in the music industry and trying to figure out what kind of a earthquake we're in right now and how we're going to come out of this and how the industry is changing or not changing. And it's really great to work with you. And I'm honored to be here.
Well, it's amazing because I can be the schizophrenic one and you're the one that's helping to provide the order. So,
I don't know how.
so how's everything going with you? I mean, it's been a while since you've been on the EntreMusician, but since we talk often, what's going on in your world? I'm so grateful for the Throwback Thursday that you had. I saw today with Jack Canfield. I mean, what's that about? He wrote the foreword to your book, right?
Yes, he did. Another great honor. I met Jack Canfield at a small free conference for writers in Boston while I was writing my book.
Hmm.
And I went to the conference because I thought, oh, this is a man who's written many books and I'm writing a book soon to be published, so I might as well check it out. And it turns out that we had a lot in common because he has three children who are all musicians.
Hmm.
And at the time, one of them was a student at Berklee, and neither he nor I knew until later on in the day as we started talking that was a total coincidence. So
Wow.
he was really excited about what I was writing in the book. And also because in the book, it's focused on sensory awareness, developing your skills. I mean, there's many things about being a singer, the skill, the training, the a science of the voice in accessible language. There's a
Yes.
lot of stories and interviews and history and philosophy about why humans sing. But what he most liked was the information about the sensory awareness because the
Hmm.
whole training is built around that.
Yes.
And the more we can develop our sensory awareness, the better we are with many other things. We make better decisions, we have better relationships, we are more productive and have more fun.
Yes.
So he really liked that because it's somewhat related to the way he teaches as well. He's an extraordinary teacher. I was really shocked. I only knew his name from a few books years ago, and I had no idea that he's actually a teacher. He's started off as a high school English teacher, and just to work with him in that way is really an extraordinary event.
Do you think that there's anybody on the planet that would not know what he is famous for? I mean, since we're saying Jack Canfield, for that one person that was living under a rock, can you just say the one series that he is just famous for?
Well, the first book that he wrote with a friend, and it's called The Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it's an extraordinary book about
Extraordinary,
stories
extraordinary.
that help people understand their perspectives, their point of view, their habitual thoughts and circumstances that are holding them back. And they're
Yes.
all stories of people who made it through some situation that was really challenging, really difficult, or really traumatic.
Yeah.
And then he created a business out of it, and he created this franchise of Chicken Soup for the Soul for just about every subject you could think of, for business
Yeah.
people, for musicians, for artists, for writers, for everybody. And it's all about chicken soup, just like your grandmother used to
Mhm.
make, or mother wanted to feed you when you were sick when you were a child. And that's how he came up with the title, because everybody can globally relate to that, being a child and being sick, and your mother brings you some kind of chicken soup or something like that,
Nourishes you.
and to nourish you and make you
Yeah.
feel like somebody's taking care of you. And that's what the books are designed for.
Dan, that's absolutely on point. And so, were you a professor of his son, the one who attended Berkeley? Did you interact
No,
with him at all?
no, I didn't know his son. It was a complete coincidence.
Wow.
And so it was really an amazing story. And his son had gone back to school late. So by the time I met Jack Canfield, he's older, and his kids are all in their 20s and 30s. So they weren't children.
Gotcha.
So I didn't know him, but it was just a complete coincidence.
Amazing. Well, I know that you've been on the show not a number of times, but previously, and we were just walking into the amazing book, Being a Singer. And I've asked you this time if you would just go deeper than you did before, and even read a couple of excerpts, because one thing about it is on this platform, we do have a lot of singer songwriters, and just that science of knowing what to do.
Mhm.
I am not a singer because I actually want to sell my music. You know what I mean? But for those who do sing, I wanted you to really go into the mechanics of what actually happens. Can you do that for us? Or
I I can, of course, but you have a great voice, speaking voice, so I know that you could sing, and there's a lot of stuff you could do with your voice if you wanted to.
well, I was in radio, so that
That's
helped. But again, I could
yeah.
probably sing. I'm great in the shower, but if you want to
Okay.
actually sell something,
Okay.
stick to your strength.
I want to tell you that a sentence that Jack Canfield begins the forward with, and because it's relevant to the stuff we've been talking about. There, he says at the beginning of the forward, there are two things that will make you wise: the books you read and the people you meet.
Mhm.
And that's a phrase he often repeats and brings up, and it's
Yeah,
really true, and it's true for both of us, I think, in the work that we've been doing in the collaborative
absolutely.
and the books we read. And he said this book I've written can change your life, and it can, because I've talked to many people who've been using it, and I've seen the results this past year or so, year and a half.
Wow.
Thousands of singers all over the world have been using the book and developing awareness that they never knew they never had before, and that they didn't
Wow.
know was even possible.
Jiminy.
So I can just tell you a little bit from the introduction. I'll just read you something about why it's here.
Mhm.
This book was written in response to the unprecedented degree of pressure on singers today. We're in the midst of a perfect storm that's creating an urgent need for tools that solve today's challenges without diluting proven approaches of the past. So this was written before COVID, long before COVID,
Mhm.
but even though we were in this perfect storm and then suddenly everything shuts down, it's relevant today because now we have a chance to rebuild
Yeah.
and recreate. And are we going to go back into something that is uh, almost abusive for a lot of musicians who are touring and have careers?
Sure.
Or are we going to take control and have musicians be able to take control of their lives and make better decisions and not be manipulated by the business, which business is a good thing. We want
Correct.
the music industry, we want the business people, but we want to be collaborators with them.
Correct.
And
Or are we going to be victims to the circumstances going on around us as a result of COVID?
Mhm.
It's not just the business, but the circumstances. So yeah, I get it.
That's a really good point. Being
Yeah.
able to take control. So let's see what else I can say here. Singing has become omnipresent in our lives. We have more opportunities to sing and be heard than ever before. At the same time, the field of vocal science and neuroscience have stepped into their golden age, new and deeper understandings of how the voice, mind, and body function emerge every day.
Yeah.
There's an extraordinary amount of information available to everyone online, in books, in every vocal studio, and on every street corner. But despite this unparalleled accessibility, many singers are confused and frustrated. Quantity of information doesn't provide solutions, it creates confusion.
Mm.
And that's really where we stand today for singers. I can't tell you that the hundreds of people I've worked with who are touring national musicians, but struggle with feeling good and enjoying it because they
Right.
have so much fatigue and discomfort that it's not even enjoyable to them, and they can't become consistent in the
Right.
recording studio and when they're touring.
Right.
And then people who are not at that level yet, people who are maybe just starting out as, or maybe they're students, they're frustrated and struggling because they're getting all this information about what they should be doing. And
Right.
when you're young, you have that pressure,
Right.
right, to be something that you see when you see the older people, more successful people. I have to be like that.
Sure.
Uh, it's a lot of pressure, and
Mhm.
what needs to happen is a moment of stepping back, thinking things through, becoming an intentional singer, an intentional musician, where you have focus where of doing what you want to do, and
Right.
developing the skills to do that without getting distracted and bombarded
That's right.
by a lot of other information.
Absolutely. Focus is one of the key components of being an entree musician. And I would imagine that, whether the person is singing opera or jazz or fronting a rock band or whatever they're doing, they need incredible focus as they stand to the center of the stage and they belt it out, for a lack of a better term, but they
Mhm.
have to be honed into where they are at the moment. And so distractions have to
Mhm.
just melt away.
Absolutely. And that is a skill that you practice so that when you are on stage, it's not something you're trying to do after not having done it for a while. It's something that happens automatically because you've been working that way at home, in the studio, in
Mhm.
rehearsals, wherever you are. So this an idea of intentional focus, it's not only our conscious focus, but it's also our unconscious focus.
Mhm.
Because singing and playing an instrument are both motor skills,
Yeah.
and motor skills are using multiple parts of the brain.
Mhm.
They are complicated movements, right? We have to get all kinds of muscles and things to move in certain ways.
Mhm.
And when you train that and practice it with sensory awareness, with awareness of what you're sounding like, what you're feeling, what's going on, and you're in the
Mhm.
moment, being sort of mindful with this intentional focus,
Right.
then it becomes automatic. Just like using chopsticks or riding a bicycle became automatic.
Yes.
When you got on a bicycle, it was very wobbly and wonky, but
Mhm.
you kept going, and suddenly you pedal, and you don't have to think about it anymore at all.
Right.
It's the same
That's
thing
right.
with every motor skill.
So there, and then there's also the story behind the story. You have your mechanics, you have your muscle memory, but you also have that mindset that really sets the tone for who you are. And I've noticed some of the best singers that I admire, that I know personally, are singers all the time, even when they're not at the mic, even when they're not in the studio. There's a presence about them as to who they are.
It is true. Mindset is important, and mindset comes from being aware.
Hmm.
And the more you are aware, the more your mindset will become more natural and
Hmm.
not forced, and not something that you're trying to become,
Yes.
but something that you are, because you're living in the moment. You're hearing things, you're seeing things, you're feeling what's happening around you. You're not listening to the voices in your head.
Right.
They're telling you what sounds you should be making, or what your
Hmm.
voice should be like, or what your music should be like.
Mm.
But you're
Wow.
living in the moment of what is and making it the way you want because you've visualized it, you've audicized it. Audicize means you have the tone quality in your mind before you sing it,
Gotcha.
and you can feel where you are, and then you can just sing, and it's automatic, and then you are in the moment. You are in the right mindset.
Now, what are some of the practical ways that a singer can take care or protect their voice, especially if they're on tour or they're going through a recording project where they, are there some protective mechanisms? What is that? What is that?
This is your ordinary everyday straw.
Okay.
This is a paper straw. I don't use plastic straws. You
Mhm.
can also get straws in bamboo and metal, because bamboo, metal, and paper won't hurt the animals. So
Yeah.
don't recommend plastic straws.
Hmm.
Straw phonation means making sound through the straw, just like humming, or if you were in your childhood, you ever used a kazoo,
Yeah.
it's really similar to that. This is based on science, so this isn't just something I made up or voice teachers made up. Uh, when you when we sing, what's happening is we have vocal folds in our larynx that are making a pitch,
Mhm.
making a sound. And actually, the pitch is really made in the brain, but that's another long story. So we
Mhm.
have the vocal folds come together and they make the sound wave. So the sound wave then comes up through your throat, out your mouth.
Wow.
And uh, we know from physics, or rather the physicist who taught the rest of us about this knew
Hmm.
that when air or water goes through a tube, there's a certain amount of air pressure, a certain amount of pressure created by that tube.
I see.
And this throat that we have that comes from our larynx up to our mouth is a tube. It's just like a flute or a trumpet or a trombone. It's a tube.
Hmm.
Those instruments are copies of us.
Yes.
So what we know from physics principle is the longer the tube, the less the air pressure. So if you have the same amount of air going through a short fat tube, it's going to require more air pressure than if you have a long thin tube.
Hmm.
And so this is why we have the straw. So we have lengthened our tube. We put the straw in our mouth.
Hmm.
Mm. We suddenly have made the tube that the sound and the air wave goes through much longer.
I
So this
see.
reduces the backflow pressure on the vocal folds. So they relax, so they close more efficiently, so we get a better sound. And it also relaxes and widens the muscles in the throat. And this has just actually, this part of the story of it, the effect on the muscles in the throat is pretty newly discovered. There was a study done last year and it's just not even published yet, I think.
Mm.
But the science of the straw in terms of physics has been known for 20 or 30 years.
Wow.
Professional voice speakers, singers use this. And
Now,
all you do,
yeah, I was going to say, can you demonstrate that?
yeah. Mm, smooth sound, no breaks from low to high. Start very low, go all the way up and all the way down without any breaks or changes in the sound.
Mm.
You can go from low to high, the same thing. See how it's very smooth, there's no breaks. So
Right.
if you're flipping, if you're going like this, that's a flip because the sound changed. That's probably not what you want in your voice because your bass line should be evenness.
Mm.
And the flipping into a lighter voice, you can use that sometimes for style if you want, but you don't want to have that be your bass line because it causes fatigue over time.
I see.
Some other things you can do with the straws, you can just sing. And you just sing through the straw. I have some allergies today that are bugging me. So,
But all right.
Star Spangled Banner, how does it start? A difficult song because it has very wide intervals and big leaps. So it's actually a really good training song, even if you sing R&B or rock music. If you train with the Star Spangled Banner, you're going to develop some really good coordination that you can use no matter what you sing.
Amazing. Well, so if I see people walking around with straws, I can assume they're either singers or they're your students. One of the,
Yeah, it's a lot of people using it today, and it's like you'd use it to warm up. You can use
oh,
it when you're learning a new piece of music that's difficult. You can use it to recover if you've been screaming too much and rehearsing a lot and you feel tiredness here.
yeah.
So this is your tool. You keep it on your piano or by your guitar and your music stand, and you use this a few times a day.
Amazing. So, we have to talk because we've been talking about academia and you're being a associate professor at Berkeley and whatnot. But let's hear a little of your story for those of you who really don't know you. Obviously, you can't become a vocal professor if you're not a singer. So, what was the journey like for you?
Hmm. It seems like it was really long. uh,
For most of us, yes.
as the years go by, it seems to get longer and longer. So, so I was always singing. Um, my mother said I sang when I got home from the hospital. So the
Mm,
nurses said I was singing in the hospital, which is very unusual. Infants don't sing, generally
mm,
speaking. Really unusual for infants to sing. But you do hear people who are musicians sometimes say that they were heard singing when they were infants too. So it does happen, but it's
yeah.
rare, very rare. Um, then I just kept singing, and all through childhood, I was really an avid singer.
Hmm.
And when I started to get more serious about it into my like early teens, say between 10 and 12, I had been playing piano. I had piano lessons, and I was playing classical piano for about 8 or 10 years when I started to get some voice lessons because I wanted to audition for some shows at school. And somewhere around that time, also, I got singing with churches, and I was singing like at special events, and I was touring my regional area with a guitarist, and we were doing um, like the Christian folk music stuff
Yeah.
that was really popular in that decade, which was around.
A couple of
So
days ago.
couple days ago. So we went around, touring like all the local churches in my area and around, the neighboring states, doing that for a few years. It was a lot of fun. And we would just get hired to sing at communions and special events at the churches like that.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. And then my mother realized that I wasn't joking when I said I wanted to be a singer. So she sent me to New England Conservatory preparatory division,
Hmm.
and then I started getting some music training. So I was around 13 by that point, and I got some theory, ear training. I got a jazz pianist teacher. Poor guy, didn't know what to do with me. It was a mess. I was like, played without sheet music? What? How did people do that? So he saved my life. I always say that. He saved my musical life.
Tell me, go deeper, unpack that, unpack that. How did he save your life? Unpack that.
Uh, well, I had been getting piano lessons from a very early age. I taught myself to read music on a very basic level using books that we had at my home. Um, and then I had piano lessons from a little old lady down the street in our neighborhood. And I had them for a long time. I would say like 7 years. And I didn't know anything about music. And I was playing Beethoven sonatas, and I had no idea what I was playing.
Mm.
I was could sight read a lot, and I was playing this beautiful classical music, and everybody was like, "Oh wow!" But I had no idea. Don't ask me what the key signature was, or don't ask me what the harmony was, because I had
Yeah.
no idea. So I wanted to learn something more contemporary, just like most young people do. And
Right.
my mother, the family member, had this jazz pianist move into their building, so she sent me to him. And at the very first lesson, we sat down at the piano, and he said, "Okay, well, show me what you do. Play something." And I said, "Okay, do you have any music?" And he said, "Well, can't you just show me a little bit of something?" I'm like,
Play something, right?
"Music? About music? What do you mean play something about music?" And he said, "Okay, well, what do you usually play?" And I told him some of the sonatas and things that I played, and I played a Chopin prelude at that time. I had no idea what it was, right? So he was aghast, and he took out a Barry Manilow song that is based on the Chopin Raindrop Prelude. I forget the song it is, but um, one of the Barry Manilow songs, because he was a great musician,
Yeah.
regardless of what you think about the style of his
Yeah.
music. He was trained, he's a trained
Yeah.
musician. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this was based on the theme. So he tried to show me how this modern pop song had taken the musical themes and harmony from Chopin and made it into a pop song. And I was completely blown away. I had no idea about any of this. So we continued with lessons, but he wouldn't let me touch the keyboard for 3 months.
Wow.
We had theory and ear training for 3 months, no touching any keys.
Mm.
Yeah. So he
How'd you
saved.
feel about that at that point? You felt like this is
Oh yeah,
what is
yeah.
this? Right?
Sorry. Yeah, I
Why am
was.
I here?
No, I was happy. I was not complaining at all.
Oh, is that right?
No, I was
I would have
happy.
been the opposite. Like, let me hit something. Stop it.
I was like, oh, wow. I mean, it was Greek to me. It was
Wow.
absolute Greek. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was very lucky. And I had a teacher in conservatory later on when I went to England Conservatory as an undergraduate
Hmm.
who also did something very similar. Um, Even though I had the basic theory from that jazz teacher, it wasn't enough.
I see.
It wasn't as rigorous as a school program. So when we got to college and I had to analyze Bach chorales, I really didn't know what I was doing, and it was really a lot of work.
I
So I
see.
had a teacher who worked with me privately and tutored me and taught me how to analyze Bach chorales, and it saved my life. So
Wow.
mm,
That's
that is.
amazing. So now, are you, after you leave this jazz teacher, are you in bands, singing groups, chorals, and what's the path that led you to Berkeley?
I did a lot of theater, so I was a musical theater kid, and that also started doing classical recitals. And one thing led to another. Like I said, I went to New England Conservatory. I became a classical soprano. When I was graduating, I realized that there were no jobs for classical sopranos, especially at that time, and especially because I'm a light high classical soprano, which is not as there's not as many paying jobs for those as there are for big dramatic classical sopranos.
Yeah.
So I went to Europe and I lived there for about 15 years. And I was able to work and sing because Europe is there's much more availability, at least at that time.
Yeah.
There was much more opportunities to sing with orchestras and concerts. It was very available and frequent. I had to audition a lot, but I got a lot more work than I ever would have gotten here in the US.
Understood. Understood. So then from Europe to Berklee College, how did that?
That's what I say. How did that happen? um, well, believe it or not, I met a ear, nose, and throat doctor in Graz, Austria. His name is Hubert Noah, and he is a singer and a voice teacher and an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And he started telling me about Seth Riggs.
Oh,
And I really thought this was crazy because, I'm an opera singer. I can't go study with like someone who teaches pop singers. That's
yeah,
crazy.
sure.
But what I learned is that Seth Riggs was a classical singer himself originally, and then he was a very successful musical theater singer on Broadway,
Hmm.
and he trained quite a number of opera singers as well as the famous celebrities that we hear about every day.
Sure.
So I came back to the States and I decided to do that because my parents were aging and I wanted to be closer to my parents as they aged. And I could see Seth Riggs more frequently. So I started traveling out to LA and we were using Skype on the internet at that time. So I was traveling out to LA a few times a year for 5 or 10 day stints with him, and then working with him intermittently on Skype and training to be a teacher. That's what I was doing with
I
him,
see.
expanding my range too, and expanding the consistency in my voice. And uh, then I started getting calls, people wanting me to teach master classes. Berklee invited me to teach a master class. And I thought, great, I'll go to Berklee once or twice a year to teach a master class, a clinic. And after the first clinic that I taught, they called me back and asked me to come there and teach.
Mm.
And I initially said no, but they talked me into it. And here, 7 years later, I'm still there.
What was the hesitancy of wanting to teach full time? What was that when
Well,
you said no?
I'm part time at Berklee. There's very few full time teachers in academia these days.
Gotcha.
Um, every college has just a small percentage of full time teachers.
I see.
But we have a wonderful union. It's part time with full benefits. It's a great job.
Hmm.
I wanted to be part time because I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. So I
Gotcha.
had been teaching for already over 10 years, and I had been singing and been on the road singing, and I knew what it is like to be riding around in buses and trains and trying to keep your voice together, trying to get ready for auditions and trying to get ready for performances when you're exhausted and stressed. And that
Right.
is a different life than academia.
Yeah.
And I want to stay in that life. I did not want to become locked in an ivory tower of Berklee and teaching only Berklee students, which is
Yeah.
wonderful to do. But I didn't
Sure.
want to be separated from real life or the real
Hmm.
world of working musicians, which
Hmm.
is where I come from. So I continue teaching privately,
Yeah.
and that keeps me in shape as a teacher. So if you teach just one kind of singer, then you lose the skills for responding to somebody else who's got a different
Exactly.
background, a different goal, different genre.
Exactly.
So that's
So
why.
you have a website for your private studies as well, right?
Yes.
And how
Yeah.
do people get in touch with you for, private lessons? Like if I, for example, wanted to sing,
You can do
which is
it.
crazy, but if I wanted to do it, how could I get in touch with you to take your
Yeah,
class or take your course?
balliro.com, and I have a page there where you can learn about teaching and enroll directly on the website for lessons. You can also email me and
Gotcha.
let me know what you need, and we can talk a little bit more specifically about what you want to do with your voice, your
Now,
goals.
you have worked with many, many students at Berkeley who have gone on to do amazing things, and you've worked with some of the greatest in the industry. I'm not trying to blow feathers here, but Phish is a huge, 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 huge group. And how did you get involved with making sure that they were singing correctly?
Yes, well, this was a great, interesting story.
Hmm.
Many people know that I teach Mike Gordon because
Yeah.
he was interviewed in my book. But even before that, it became known because there was a tremendous change in his singing, and his fans noticed.
Mm.
And his fans asked, "What's up? What happened to Mike?" So it was a great experience. I don't teach the band Fish.
Gotcha.
They're they're all very close. They are like brothers,
Hmm.
and if they become too close, they start to have problems. So they each have their own independent sort of ways of dealing with whatever they want to do with their music in their life. They all have their own bands. They all do their own thing on the side. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they'd go crazy. I think Trey is the only other one who takes vocal coaching now, although they've
Hmm.
all had coaching in the past. Fish and Fishman and who's the drummer, and Paige, who's the keyboard, both have wonderful voices too. Mike's challenge was that he's a bassist, and bassists don't play melody, and they play interesting rhythms
Yeah.
and far away from the pitch range is far away from where your voice is.
Hmm.
So it's really challenging. You don't hear too many basses who are singers.
Right.
Paul McCartney, very famous, but you don't hear of a lot of them.
Sure.
So that's the reason why it's a little bit challenging. Um, so he was not happy with his singing, and he didn't feel comfortable, and he had a lot of things that he could do musically, but he never felt like he could control his voice, and he was always trying to keep it together any way he could. And when I met him, I just said, "Look, you're a world class bassist. The reason you can't sing isn't because of you; it's because you haven't been trained. Because if you can play the bass and you can be one of the top bassists in the world today, you can
Yeah.
sing."
Yeah.
So he was quite surprised by that. He thought that there was some reason he couldn't sing,
Uh,
but it's just experience. So I started working with him June 2012, and we debuted his new voice at uh, about 12 weeks into that. I think 10 weeks into that, he sang with Bob Weir at a streaming concert even before COVID. It was a streaming concert as a tribute to Jerry Garcia on the death
okay.
of Jerry
Right.
Garcia,
Right.
and he just blew everybody away. I was on the stream, and the fans were writing, "Hey, what happened to Mike? Did you listen to Mike's voice?" The chat was just hysterical to watch while Mike was singing. It was really beautiful. Uh, yeah, and then he had his real debut, big debut, in January. So we started in June, and January 1st, New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden. That's what Phish is all about. They sell out Madison Square Garden in a matter of hours.
Yes.
And he had his debut with a solo there on the opening of the second half of the concert. And his fans still talk about it.
Mm.
So they still talk about it. We were in a chat once on Facebook, Mike and I wasn't talking. I was just there watching Mike talk. He was doing a Q&A with his fans, and people were asking, that song you sang at Madison Square Gardens 5 years ago is great. His fans remember everything. And I've been
Wow.
really fortunate to meet some of them and to meet his fan club. They're
Yeah.
really, really a lot of great people that are involved with this band because even though it's a little bit of a, its own sort of bubble and it's not huge in the mainstream, they
Hmm.
have such a huge following that I don't even know how you could measure it, but they have millions of fans,
They
and
really do.
the fans understand them. They understand these four guys, and they
Sure.
understand the relationships. And one time I said to Mike when I had only been working with him for a month or so,
Hmm.
and I hadn't known Phish very well. And I said to him one day, I said, Mike, your fans, they really love you. They really love you. They really love the band. And he said, yeah, I know. And I said, well, I mean, not just the way celebrities do, because, celebrities always have fans that love them. That's normal.
Right.
But your fans, like, they really love you. It's not just like a fan thing. They really love you. And he said, yes, I know. We talk about that a lot. And we think it's because they know how much we love each other.
Mm. That's good. That's
Yeah,
very
so
good.
it's a special group, and even if that music style isn't your thing, it's worth listening to and watching these guys
Yeah,
because
it's the
it's moving.
organic energy that they bring to the recordings and to their concerts that, that's not manufactured. I mean, you can only rehearse so much. That is authenticity. They are a very real band.
Yes, and Mike talks about that in the interview in my book, that how that comes about. It's really something to watch, and if you're at a live concert, it's really special experience because they're all world class in their instruments,
Sure.
and they're all playing fantastic. And they'll start a jam, and it'll be nice and good. And you watching these four musicians and these four guys, they're all great. So you listen
Yeah.
to Page, the keys, and you listen to each one, and they're just excellent musicians.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, while this is going on, the music starts morphing, and all of a sudden, it's not four guys anymore. It's
Right.
Phish.
Right.
It's like it becomes one sound,
Mhm.
and it's really transformative. And I have never seen anything like it before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful that you helped Mike find his genesis and transform the music. And so you are part of their history and that transformative energy that people feel.
Yeah,
And,
it's an honor.
one thing that's really interesting, and this, I have to ask this question. Of course, I'm learning you. I know you much better than I did 3 years ago. And the interesting thing about you is not only are you an author and you know the mechanics of the voice and you teach that very well, but you are an incredible marketer too. How did you hone your skills in social media and marketing? Was that a result of having to do it because, hey, I got this box of books sitting here and I need to do something with them, or what happened? Because you're such a natural.
Well, thank you. That is it was not easy, and I don't think I'm a natural. I think it's all trained and learned.
Uh,
Um,
well, you
and I
make
don't
it
think
look
I'm that good.
easy.
I'm not that good. A student of mine sent me a video today of somebody promoting straw phonation,
Mm.
and they had such a great business behind it. I thought, and I said to my student, I said, see, you can see she's a business person and I'm not, because they had a really great model for marketing and build and showing their business and driving people to their YouTube channel and things like that. And I
Mm.
am not there yet. It's not really what I love, and so it's really difficult for me to buy into it.
Mm.
But it's something we all have to do today, and not just musicians.
Mhm.
Everybody in the world has to do it today because it's the way the world is set up.
Yeah.
Communication and news is traveling so fast that if you do not make yourself visible, if you do not show up,
Right.
you won't be
Right.
seen and you won't be able to participate and you won't be part of the dialogue. And that's in any way, in any field. So we have to show up. We just
Yes.
have to do it. We owe it to our industry and to the people that we can impact to show up.
Yes.
To
Yeah,
show
you're
up.
right. That's half the battle. That's 50% right there, is just showing up on
Mhm.
time and being prepared. And
Mhm.
then the rest, usually, if you're well rehearsed and if you're poised for it, it'll take care of itself. But you got to get up out of bed,
Yes. And what happened to me is I tried to just hire people to do things for me without really understanding what it was, and I found that that didn't work. That
Sure.
failed miserably. So I made a lot of mistakes and spent money on things that were worthless.
Mhm.
And finally, when the pandemic shutdown happened, I said, "Look, I've got to learn this stuff
Yeah,
because now or never. And if I don't learn how to do it, I can't hire anybody because I can't help them and show them what needs to be done if I don't know what it is." So I
absolutely.
did take some courses. I did work with some people to show me how to focus and what to focus on, and just worked on developing my voice so that I can speak with people
Yeah,
in settings like social media as myself.
absolutely. Now, what would you tell the Linda Balliro who is coming up and watching this, who is 17, 18 years old and poised on a career? She is very serious about being a singer. What are the three things that you would tell her to do immediately?
Train, train your craft,
Mhm.
whether that's your voice as an opera singer or a classical singer, or your songwriting, or both. No matter what genre you sing, you have to train your craft, your
Mhm.
instrument, and your songwriting skills and your voice. Uh, that's number one. And number two is trust yourself and just trust your own instincts and your own interpretation of your experience.
Yeah,
Don't let anybody else tell you what your experience is.
that's good.
And third, just take risks.
Mm.
Take a lot of risks. Put yourself out there and be uncomfortable. Because if you wait to be perfect, you will never be perfect and the time will never be right.
Wow. That's good. That's good. I think I'll employ those three right now.
Try to remember
That's,
them every day.
that's absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, you've seen the show, and you know that there's always a final question that I ask with respect to what you may have thought we were going to talk about, and I didn't ask the question or make the statement. What would that be in with respect to you answering the unasked question?
Okay, I thought you might ask why train your voice, which of course you know.
I
Is
know, so I was stupid and didn't ask it. But
yeah,
why?
you're
Why
not
train your
stupid.
voice?
You're not stupid, but young singers today in contemporary music are not taught about craft and using their voice as an instrument.
Mhm.
So because of technology, it's great that we can go into a studio, we can choose the right mic that makes us sound the best, and we can just get into the feel of it, give a vibe, give a feeling of the phrase, and the producer and the engineer can manipulate the sound to make it sound whatever way they think will sell the most.
Sure.
Now, we need to be creating music and art that people want, because otherwise we'll be just living in our living rooms for the rest of our lives. So we need to
Correct.
create something that people want. So there is an aspect of commercial business that we have to follow, or else we can't do anything creative. We can't live in a cave.
Mhm.
But on the other side of it, we can't let that dictate everything we do and limit our own abilities.
Yeah.
The great musicians and singers of the past crafted their voice and their musicianship and their education for years and years
Yeah.
and years.
It's true.
You know, one of the things I recently learned about that I didn't know myself is that a lot of the great early Black musicians
Mhm.
that started this music industry, this contemporary music world that we know today, like Ray Charles
Yeah.
and oh my gosh, who was the band leader that is so famous, whose name is going to trip off
Who
me?
is it? Duke? Duke
Yes,
Ellington?
Duke Ellington. Yeah.
Hmm.
They, and their contemporaries, they had years of education in classical music
Oh yeah.
theory and
Oh yeah.
instruments when they were in high school and in school. One of the reasons they had that great training was because of the struggles of Black Americans
Yeah.
when they were emancipated and working to become part of the society. Uh, people understood, the leaders understood that they better get high levels of education, because if we don't get educated really well, there's no way we're going to be able to participate in this society.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the Black schools and educational systems were very tough and very rigorous. And they
Hmm.
were teaching these young boys, you've got to be good at this, or else you're not going to be able to participate in this world.
Certainly.
And so they worked very, very hard. So when they came out of that many years of training their craft in classical music theory, they
Hmm.
were able to create new sounds and new ways of using music because
Yes,
of their years of crafting. So if you want to be unique and you want to have a unique sound, the first
certainly.
step is craft. And when you master your craft, it's very easy to develop the kind of music that you hear in your head or that you feel in your heart, and to use your voice in an authentic way. We have to be able to communicate with our own voice, not
Right.
create a sound that other people want or expect.
That's true. And you need to know the rules before you break them,
Mm.
to create your own thing. Now, you said something. I thought this was going to be the last question, but as you always do, you push another button. With respect to, you mentioned, the manipulation of a singer's sound through, software and whatnot. As, most of the people that I know who have attended Berklee, very serious singers, um, the notion of an auto tune or, Melodyne, which is a dime a dozen now, it's used all the time. But is there an aspect of that serious singer that says, look, I don't want that artificial manipulation on my voice? Is there still a community for that? Or that's just, we're just flipping them out like pancakes because you have to have auto tune?
Well, there
What's the conversation like among singers, real singers?
real singers are not happy about it.
Gotcha.
There is an element to the commercial music field where we have to be extremely consistent on a recording, because modern ears expect this incredibly even sound.
Yes.
So there is a certain amount of comping and engineering that you must do in every recording, or else it just doesn't sound professional. You can't put it on Spotify. On the
Yeah.
other hand, um, if you overdo it, then you're only good for club music, which is not a bad thing. Dance music, club music, it has its place, and it's also very creative
Sure.
and has a lot of artistic qualities to it.
Hmm.
But it's not the same. So if you want to be a musician who has a craft, that's probably not going to be the kind of music you're creating. You might create some of it
Right.
because it's good for us to do all things, right? So
Yeah.
um, so people who are serious about crafting their instrument, they don't want their recordings altered with a great deal of Melodyne. They don't want their voices covered up with reverb, and they're frustrated by it. I recently had a young artist come to me for voice lessons, and she was doing really well, and she's won awards, and she's a wonderful songwriter, and she's having an impact. And I said, well, what do you want to do with your voice? Because I listened to your recording and I'm curious about what it is you want to improve. She said, oh, well, that's all fake. I can't do any of that.
Mm.
So that's just the recording. And if you ask me to come up on stage and sing, I can't do it. I can't do it
Wow.
like what you're hearing on the recording.
Wow.
And so she knew herself that this was not what she wanted to be. So that was her own values and her own artistic vision of herself and the kind of musician she wanted to be, that she wasn't going to stay with that. So we worked, and she's doing really well now. Yeah, and she's not trying to be a great vocalist. This is a singer-songwriter, indie musician. She's not trying to be Whitney Houston,
Right.
but she needed to have that ability to go back and forth throughout her range without straining or yelling or going into falsetto and losing pitch or tone quality.
Yeah.
That's really what you have to be able to do. It's basic skills. It's not that everyone has to be a Whitney Houston or
Right.
everyone has to have the quality of a Broadway singer. It means that you have to be able to use your instrument in a natural, authentic way.
Absolutely. Well, I love you, don't you, sis? I mean, you are just right, absolutely on point to me. And I'm so grateful not only for, how we met and for the wonderful work that you do, but that you're a part of the collaborative and such an important voice in what we're trying to accomplish at the EntreMusician. Thank you so much for just being you.
Well, I'm really shocked and amazed because it's really wonderful to be connected to you, and I can't believe now that you said it was 3 years ago that we started, because that is incredible. 3 years, that's a long time.
Well, that was the first time that we interviewed was about
Yeah,
3 years ago.
yeah,
Uh, but
that's
coming along with this collaborative is just relatively new, and I think that we are really hitting our foundational points, and we're starting to progress. But that, and listen, I'm saying this. I'm not trying to flatter you, but
mm,
you being that solid staple that's needed, that straw that's needed to really make this happen. I'm really grateful for you for it. So thank you.
thank
Um,
you. Well, I'm grateful for your leadership and putting us all together and bringing us together and making it happen.
Thank you very much. Now, if you're watching the Entre Musician, you know that even though we're ending this, if you've subscribed to the EntreMusician.com and you've clicked on the backstage pass and you've registered, the conversation doesn't stop here. I grill her even harder backstage. So all you have to do is go to the EntreMusician.com, click that register at the backstage pass, and there are 4 tiers for you joining us. You can be a fan, follower, friend, or family member. And you can avail yourself to more interview content, blogs, newsletters, as well as get to be a guest when we do our weekly collaborative. So do that right now. Linda's going to say goodbye. I'm going to say goodbye, and then we're going to go backstage. But this is the incredible Linda Balliro. Any final words, dear heart?
Thank you, Jerry. It's a pleasure to be with you always.
Always. She's an incredible Entre musician. My name is Jerry B. I'm the Entre musician, but that's not important. So are you. You are an Entre musician. Peace and blessings to you, and we will see you next time. God bless.
God bless.